Chapter 17. She'll never be good with him again. Casey heard Amy's words and was so angry. This hateful woman, saying such things, was simply trying to provoke her relationship with Pat. I'd do anything for Pat. Of course I'd be willing, Casey said immediately. But who the hell are you? Why do you order me? Amy snorted lightly, only thinking it was a child's nonsense. She looked down at Patrick and said, "You need to rest for a while. I will come over and give you a massage later." After speaking, Amy was ready to leave. She was quite tired today, and she came to Patrick as soon as she came back, so she had to go back and rest for a while. Besides, the potion she was going to give to Patrick tonight had not been prepared yet. If there was any further delay, the time to come tonight will be later than usual. Amy can only use the night time to help Patrick treat, because the person who harmed Patrick had not been found. She cannot completely restore the instrument. Once found by that person, she may make that person panic and resort to some extreme means to put Patrick to death directly. Therefore, Amy must race against time and cherish every night. She really didn't have the mood and energy to deal with Casey, a charming young lady. However, Casey was spoiled by the Hayden after all. Seeing that Amy was about to leave, she stood in front of Amy again. However, before she could speak this time, she heard Patrick say in a cold voice, "Casey, don't be rude to your sister-in-law." With his words, Amy was stunned. She turned to look at Patrick. Being unable to believe what she heard, he admitted that she was his wife. Amy stared at Patrick suspiciously, feeling more and more why this man was so strange. Didn't he hate her? Now what did this mean? Protect her? Amy felt confused. Looking at Patrick's eyes, she almost asked directly, "Are you okay?" Casey also had a look of shock, and her tears welled up almost instinctively. Amy called herself as her sister-in-law. Casey just thought that this woman was shameless. However, Pat just said so himself. Moreover, Pat was so indifferent to her for an inexplicable woman. Casey was so wronged that she yelled at Patrick, "I will never admit that she's my sister-in-law." After yelling, Casey rushed out of Patrick's room without looking back. At this moment, only Camden was extremely happy in his heart. He thought that the granddaughter-in-law he chose was quite good. Look, it had only been a few days, and his grandson had already started to protect his wife. When waiting a little longer, Camden was sure that his wish of having a great-grandson will come true. He had to hurry to pick out a few more names, both boys and girls, with surname of Reed or Hayden. He had to let his granddaughter-in-law know that he was an extremely open-minded person and would not think that children had to take their father's surname. He wanted to be the best great-grandfather in the world. Elsie had been standing outside waiting, and she was very confident that she would be able to go in and meet Patrick with Casey's confirmation. However, the longer the waiting time, the more uneasy Elsie felt in her heart. Casey would never lie to her. What happened this time? Why hadn't she called her yet? Riley had already left long ago and didn't care about her at all. He wasn't worried at all that Elsie would break in without authorization, because even if Elsie was bold enough, she wouldn't dare. Elsie waited outside anxiously. Her fingers holding the lunchbox kept exerting force, until her fingertips began to turn white. She wanted to hear what they were talking inside, but the sound insulation was so good that she was already lying on the door, but she still couldn't hear anything. Finally, when Elsie got impatient with waiting, the door was finally opened. Elsie's face was filled with joy, and she was about to walk in. Even a very beautiful smile appeared on her face. She wanted to meet Patrick with the most perfect appearance. She was so beautiful. No man did not love her smiling face. She believed that Patrick was the same. However, things were not what Elsie thought. Although the door was opened, it was not Casey who told her to go in, but she was running out crying. Elsie was hit by her. Her shoulder hurt, but she didn't bother to ask Casey why she was crying. She looked inside, but saw nothing. Casey stopped, only then remembered that Elsie was still waiting outside. However, she didn't want to see Patrick at all now. As soon as Casey grabbed Elsie's hand, she carried and walked outside. "Elsie, let's go. We won't care about Pat anymore." Patrick actually yelled at her for another woman. She will never get along with him again. Chapter 18 Hayden family pampers her. Elsie was inexplicably dragged by Casey. The high heels on her feet made her unable to bear such dragging at all, and she almost sprained her feet a few times. It wasn't until she was dragged out of Patrick's yard by Casey that she finally couldn't help shaking off Casey's hand and asked angrily, "Casey, what's the matter with you? Didn't you agree to bring me over to see Pat? What's the matter with you dragging me outside now? And you didn't see me wearing high heels? Are you trying to throw me to death?" Casey was bombarded by Elsie. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Elsie in disbelief. Elsie, who had always been gentle in front of her, spoke softly, and was always considerate, would actually get angry at her. Casey almost felt that she might be dreaming today. Otherwise, how could this world be so mysterious? What happened to all of this? She looked at her pair of high heels that seems to be 12 centimeters in length, frowned unconsciously, and immediately thought of the woman in Patrick's room. That woman called Amy, right? She remembered Amy seemed to be wearing a pair of very ordinary flat shoes. That woman called Amy, right? She remembered Amy seemed to be wearing a pair of very ordinary flat shoes, beige, and they didn't look like brand products. Without any logo or decoration, they were so ordinary, however, at this moment, when compared with Elsie's well-dressed appearance. Casey suddenly felt that Elsie was weak. Wearing 12 centimeters high heels, her aura was not as strong as that of Amy. Moreover, on Elsie's meticulously made-up face, every blackhead was perfectly covered, making her face look flawless. It made Casey find it very strange, and there was an unbearable sense of strangeness, especially at this moment. Elsie was glaring at Casey and was annoyed, making her look so hideous. Only then did Casey know that Elsie had such a big resentment towards herself. She frowned, and her voice subconsciously turned small. "Elsie, are you losing your temper with me now?" Elsie didn't realize that Casey had developed a strange feeling towards herself, and said, "I'm asking you. We've already agreed that you'll bring me to see Pat. What do you mean now? I haven't seen him yet, but you just dragged me out. Are you trying to make my trip for nothing?" Casey suddenly felt that this woman, Elsie, had a problem with her mind. It was not like she didn't know Patrick's temperament. When she came here before, she didn't guarantee that she would see him. Now she lost her temper at herself just because she didn't see him. Why was she so courageous suddenly? Casey stood up straight, folded her arms around her chest, and said, "You run for nothing. I thought you should be used to it. Why? Are you blaming me now? Elsie, are you messing with me?" Without her, Elsie couldn't even get through the gate of Hayden's mansion, but dared to attack her. Who did she think she was? Or was she, Casey, being low-key now that people forgot that is the only lady in the Hayden family? Who in the Hayden family didn't pampers her? How dared Elsie bully her? She was getting impatient, wasn't she? No. Patrick didn't pampers her or spoil her anymore. Now he was helping outsiders to bully her. Hey she was going to find her second old brother in a while, and she'll never be with Pat again. The more Casey thought about it, the more angry she became, and unconsciously vented her anger on Elsie. "Let me tell you, Elsie, you like Pat. That's your own business. I have no obligation to help you. If you think you will definitely be my sister-in-law, I advise you to give up early. Even if you can be my sister-in-law, you will still have to support me in the future, not to mention, you are not worthy of Pat at all. But you don't deserve it." Casey yelled at Elsie and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to her. She called a bodyguard from the Hayden family and told him to send Elsie out, and then went back to her room without looking back. Hey if she can't teach Amy a lesson, she would do it to Elsie. From now on, she will never help this stupid woman chase Pat again. Only now did Elsie realize that she had really pissed off Casey. She hurried forward to grab Casey and tell her that she didn't think so. But Casey didn't give her a chance at all. Elsie was so angry that her nails were digging into her flesh. She didn't understand what was going on. Casey was fine before she came here, and even held her arm affectionately and called her future sister-in-law. Why did she enter the room for a while, and then come out? Everything changed. Chapter 19 Grab it even for me. Amy didn't know anything about what happened outside. She went back to her room directly through another door. Her room was originally connected to Patrick's room. If she walked from the main entrance, she will need to detour. If she walked from the back door, she only needed to open the respective doors. After Casey's fuss, Amy had no time to rest. She didn't want to waste any time in order to treat Patrick, so when she returned to her room, she took out the medicine and started to mix it. She used it on Patrick once last night, and Patrick's physical feedback was not bad, which made Amy more confident that she can heal Patrick. In particular, Patrick's body was very healthy, and the reaction he can give surprised Amy. Therefore, for tonight's measurement, Amy had increased some. She still used a conservative measurement last night, fearing that Patrick's body would be overwhelmed. Fortunately, the worrying things did not happen, and the result was better. After mixing the potion, Amy had to put the potion in a small refrigerator and keep it cold for 4 hours, so that it will have the best effect after it was injected into Patrick's body. Taking advantage of this time, Amy turned on the computer and opened a website that had not been used for a long time. In an instant, crackling message prompts popped up continuously. Amy's face darkened in an instant, and she stared at the computer screen speechlessly. After all the messages were prompted, she didn't open them one by one to browse through them, but turned them all off. She sent out a message: "Whoever sends me a pop-up message will get out of here." In an instant, those who were eager to try were about to send a message to Amy but were stopped. Even, some had their fingers on the enter key and immediately moved their hands away from the key. It was a good thing they didn't press the enter key. Otherwise, they who finally got in would be kicked out because they moved too fast and offended their boss. Amy waited for a minute and continued typing on the keyboard after seeing that everyone was still quick-witted. The Neuron Restoration Project 3 years ago has been restarted. I have a very good patient here. When the time comes, 2 people will come over and go to the operating table with me. Now, who cared about Amy's threats just now? The pop-up message kept popping up, almost causing Amy's computer to crash. "Boss, choose me, choose me. My current skill is number 1. Only I can match your skill, boss. Boss, look at me. I can endure hardship and be cute. I am your source of happiness, boss. Boss, ignore him. Boss, choose me." It's the 10th disciple's turn. Amy didn't bother to read those messages and just said, "I will choose the candidate according to my mood, and you don't have to fight and frame each other. Now I want you to do one thing first." "Boss, tell me." "Amy, I am short of a medicine here. I have already written the ingredients. I will give you 3 days to make it for me and send it to Israel." Then, Amy sent a document with only a few equations on it, but everyone fell silent after reading it. They were people who thought they offended their boss. What their boss wanted could not be an ordinary thing. Finally, someone tentatively asked, "Boss, there is an element in it. We don't have it here." Amy held her chin and smiled, thinking that these people were really cute. If it was easy to get, can she go online to find them? She typed a few times on the keyboard and replied, "That's why I gave you 3 days to get it done." Everyone was speechless. They felt that their boss was giving them a hard time, and they had enough evidence. Amy knew what they were thinking without asking, and shook her head helplessly before giving a new instruction. "There will be an auction in Lasnan tomorrow night, and at that time, the finale lot will let you get this ingredient," Amy said. Everyone was dumbfounded, and no one responded for a long time. Amy was speechless, and directly named one of them. "Kareem, you are the closest to Lasnan. Go there now. I have someone prepare an invitation letter. Tomorrow night, you go and take that for me." "Yes, boss." After Amy finished explaining, she ignored them and they became lively again. Kept sending her messages. She directly closed the page, preparing to tidy up and go to Patrick's room. Just then, Amy's cell phone rang. It was from a hidden number. Usually, those who wanted to contact Amy will only call her unless there was an extremely important matter. Generally speaking, they will only send her a message, and at most, they will just make an online call to her. At this moment, it was from directly a phone, which made Amy's face darken in an instant. She answered without any hesitation. The caller was Asa Wells, who Amy had arranged to provide Kareem Bond with ticket to the auction. The moment Amy answered the phone, Asa was obviously relieved and became nervous again, and said to Amy, Amy, I just got the news that the item you want is also wanted by the Hank family, drool, and they've got it all sorted out. It's a given that we won't win them. Amy's face didn't look good, and she tapped her fingers on the table. Hank family was her old enemy. There had been constant fights in the past, and occasionally she felt that it was not interesting, so she would let them go a few times. In the past few years, she had no interest in some things, and almost forgot the existence of this family. Unexpectedly, it was rare for her to want to get something again, and she would confront them again. This feeling was really fucked up. Amy chuckled lightly, full of mockery, and said to Asa, then let them go bankrupt. Was everything in order? Then she will let the Hanks clearly understand what it meant by what was lost was lost. Asa had not heard Amy speak in such a tune for many years, swallowed unconsciously, and said after a long time, okay, Amy, don't worry. I will help you with this matter. Amy responded, and before hanging up the phone, she suddenly thought of something and said to Asa, if you don't get it, you have to grab it for me.